After I released my hunting rifle tier list video a few months ago, I got an overwhelming number of requests to do a hunting scope tier list video. So this video was produced by popular demand. This video will only review products within a manufacturer's scope line that is more or less hunting specific. And by hunting specific, I'm not talking about tactical or long range specific scopes that are utilized by douchebag hunters that use elk as target practice at 800 yards. Basically, I'm talking about second focal plane variable power scopes with bold readable reticles and low enough magnification to jump shoot a deer at 30 yards while you're walking through the woods. These are basically scopes that an ethical hunter who knows how to stalk within 400 yards would utilize. So prepare to get triggered and release your inner keyboard commando while I go through my hunting scope tier list. In order to have a semi-credible tier list, I need to have criteria that I judge the product by. And this is the tough part because a guy who hikes around stalking animals on foot will have much different criteria for a hunting scope than a guy who sits in a blind. So I'll let my viewers decide what criteria is most important for a hunting scope. I did a huge survey on my channel to determine what your most desired attributes of a hunting scope are. The top 3 items were durability, glass quality, and value, in that order, but durability won by a large margin. To judge durability, I'm going to draw on my own personal experience, using and reviewing hundreds of different scopes over the years. But to eliminate a lot of my personal bias, I'm going to lean heavily on the rock slide drop test results, as this is probably the best third-party testing available for scope durability. I also understand that many manufacturers have both budget and premium product lines, and this is actually where value comes into play in my mind. And I'll look at the level of durability and glass quality for the price when I look at those scopes. So sit back and prepare to get mad while I enthusiastically slay your sacred cows. We'll jump right into this video and start with the world's most popular hunting scope brand, LEUPOLD. LEUPOLD has the most profound hunting heritage probably in the world right now and was the pillar of American scope quality in the industry for just decades. The first scope I bought myself was a LEUPOLD that I saved my money for months to purchase 35 years ago. Everyone was jealous of that bad boy, and it served me well on many, many memorable hunts. But since then, I've used close to 100 LEUPOLD scopes, and I've used them around the world. LEUPOLD has the most complete product line of any hunting scope manufacturer in existence. They offer great glass and every single feature a hunter can ever want on a scope at a pretty reasonable price. The reticle options for hunters is just unrivaled by, but things aren't as perfect as they seem with LEUPOLD. Over the last decade, about when Bruce Pettit took control of the company, LEUPOLD quality really began to decline. And their biggest mistake was that they decided to throw durability out the window in the quest for a lighter weight scope. Basically, 2 things were happening in the scope industry at that time. Firstly, internet commandos were convincing everyone that saving a few ounces on your scope and weight was necessary to be a successful mountain hunter. And to meet this request, plastic parts were used instead of metal ones in scopes. And secondly, every mall ninja hunter out there wanted to be an ultra tactical sniper, and they were demanding a huge range of elevation adjustment in their hunting scopes. And to provide this maximum elevation adjustment, a lot of scopes like LEUPOLD started making their scope tube walls really thin to accommodate that. I mean, let's be honest here. The whole lightweight hunting scope craze was kind of a trick that was played on us, because these scope manufacturers, I mean, think about it. They got to use plastic parts instead of metal ones and use less material in their scopes. So they were selling you a cheaper scope, marketed as a lighter scope, and charging you more for it. So just be aware of that. But in the last 5 years, I personally have had many premium LEUPOLD VX5 and VX6 scopes go bad on me. In the last 2 years, I received 2 scopes from LEUPOLD that wouldn't track or hold zero right out of the box, not even used yet. Every modern variable power LEUPOLD scope repeatedly fails in the rock slide drop test, and they've tested a lot of them. VX5 HDs, VX6 HDs, the Mark IVs, the Mark Vs, they all fail horribly early in the tests. You know, LEUPOLD currently makes one of the most fragile scopes on the market. It's just a sad reality. And LEUPOLD, you really need to improve. And they're hovering at the edge of the stay away tier right now, but I'm going to put them in the needs to improve tier. At one time, Burris was a very highly regarded brand that was 100% manufactured in the USA. Even when they moved most of their scope production to Japan, Burris still sold fantastic products, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the glory days of Burris have long since passed. After Beretta Holdings bought the company, they decided to drastically cut costs at Burris. Over time, most hunting scope manufacturing was moved to China or the Philippines. The bad part was that Burris rode on their previous reputation for years and years and was charging premium prices for budget scopes. Rockslide tested a 20-year-old 4-field 2 scope, and it easily passed the durability test, but a brand new Signature HD scope failed the test miserably. Burris doesn't pretend to be top tier anymore, and they brought pricing down to budget value levels, which is a good thing. If I can only spend $400 on a scope, you know, maybe I would buy a Burris Signature HD or something like that, but I really have to baby it. SCHMIDT & Bender is a European scope manufacturing powerhouse, where lesser brands of scope have budget lines made in Asia or assembled in the USA with Asian parts. S&B scopes are all made in Germany and Hungary, and they're all top tier. They make no scopes where corners are cut for value or, you know, to have a low-cost product line. S&B doesn't do that. And my S&B Polar has the best glass that I've ever seen in my life in a hunting scope, and I'm serious about that. You know, and the icing on the cake with SCHMIDT & Bender is that all of their scopes are heavy-duty, reliable scopes that'll last you a lifetime. You know, this thing is just an absolute tank, and you could feel it. I think I have rifles that are lighter than this damn scope. But S&B passed the rock slide drop test as well, and I've actually never seen an S&B hunting scope go down. SCHMIDT & Bender does have a couple of issues, though. First of all, their scopes are extremely expensive. You know, maybe too expensive, so they're out of reach for most hunters. Secondly, I feel that SCHMIDT & Bender is kind of out of touch with your average hunter. You know, they're obsessed with these huge 56 millimeter objectives, big fat 34 millimeter tubes, and first focal plane scopes on low magnification, short distance hunting scopes, which is ridiculous. But even though they're kind of out of touch with what most of their consumers want, S&B is definitely top tier. Like Burris, Bushnell was once a very reputable scope manufacturer that went too far down the low-cost rabbit hole and ended up losing their way. We won't be talking about their rebranded tactical scopes made by Lowe in Japan that they want $2,000 for. We're only talking about their hunting scopes. Bushnell hunting scopes are the first scopes in this video that I'll refer to as Kmart scopes because that's where you mainly saw the Bushnell scopes, at Kmart in bubble packs next to cheap bricks of .22 long rifle ammo. Most Bushnell hunting scopes are pretty much junk trying to ride the reputation that they had 30 years ago. But they were brave enough to send one of their flagship ProMatch ED scopes in for rock slide evaluation, and the scope's erector broke immediately. There's no question here. Bushnell is the first scope that is going in the stay away tier. TRACT is one of several boutique scope brands that have low optics in Japan, make scopes for them to their specifications. They kind of remind me of a mini LEUPOLD in that they offer great features and glass for the price, and they have a good variety of hunting scope options. TRACT really peddles to YouTube influencers, and they market them hard through YouTube. And, they have gained a following through these influencers over the years. I've personally used a Toric UHD, and I actually thought it was a decent scope. But like I said, it reminded me of a LEUPOLD that had better turrets. I didn't put that scope through the ringer or use it really hard because it wasn't my scope. Unfortunately, Rockslide tested that exact same scope and it failed the drop test evaluation. No scope that fails the Rockslide durability test can receive a rating above would buy. So I'm putting TRACT in the would buy tier. In the past, U.S. military snipers and designated marksmen mainly used fixed 10 power scopes because those were the only scopes that could really hold up to abuse. NIGHTFORCE changed that in the 1990s and created the first variable power rifle scope that Special Forces could 100% trust. NIGHTFORCE's bread and butter claim to fame is reliability above all else, and they never strayed from that goal. In 2014, NIGHTFORCE jumped into the hunting scope market with their SHV line of hunting scopes. And, they lack a lot of the features of the more expensive tactical scopes, but they retain the same reliability. You'll find no plastic parts or thin tube walls in any NIGHTFORCE scope. And the SHV line gives extreme reliability with decent glass, and it does all that at an affordable price. So the value with these is actually very high. In my opinion, the NX8 and the NXS 2 to 5 to 10, those scopes also rock. Every NIGHTFORCE scope, from top tier to the cheapest one, has passed the Rockslide durability test with no issues. NIGHTFORCE rightfully finds its place in the top tier category. SWAROVSKI is a highly coveted brand in the hunting community, mainly due to their excellent glass. The glass in their top-of-the-line rifle scopes, binoculars, and spotting scopes is considered God tier. In addition to this amazing glass, SWAROVSKI has some of the best hunting reticles and the smoothest operating magnification rings on the market. The illumination on their Z6i and Z8i scopes is also very ingenious. Unfortunately, like LEUPOLD, Swarovski went on a quest to produce ultralight hunting scopes, and durability suffered. No Swarovski scope has ever passed the Rockslide durability test. And actually, the Z3 scopes fail even faster than the Z5 and up scopes in those tests. I was in Zimbabwe this year with a Swarovski scope hunting buffalo and elephant, and honestly, it performed great. I've personally never had a Swarovski scope fail, but since no scope that consistently fails the Rockslide test can go in the upper tiers, Swarovski has to stay in the would buy tier. Simmons is a brand that was never really good, and Bushnell bought them and made them even worse, in my opinion. As a centerfire rifle scope used to hunt big game, you would never touch a Simmons scope. And, we all know that, or at least all smart people do. But don't fast forward through the Simmons review too fast because they do have use. If you buy your kid their first air rifle or 22, a $50 or $100 Simmons scope might actually be a good buy. Simmons makes a scope called the Pro Target Air that is rated for Springer air rifles, and it sits on most air guns kids are running around with these days. The kids seem happy with them, so who am I to argue? The glass on Simmons scopes is very bad, durability is very bad, and they could be made by communist slave labor in China. I don't know. But they would never pass any serious drop or durability tests. These are your stereotypical Kmart scopes, so they're going in the stay away tier. After the fall of the Soviet Union and the dissolution of communism in Europe, MEOPTA became a major global player in the rifle scope game. For 3 decades, this checkmate scope was known for great optics, sold at half the cost of German or Austrian brands. It's been an American-owned company, though, from 1991 to about 2023. In 2023, the Carlyle Group bought MEOPTA, and the entire company has really gone to shit. They immediately started sourcing parts from China and the Philippines, and as of right now, rifle scopes are being assembled in China, and they closed down their United States service center as well. Customer service is currently non-existent, and people are having issues with warranty work right now. The new owners of MEOPTA won't answer questions about the country of origin of any of their products, but people who buy are surprised when the box says made in China. As of December 2025, MEOPTA is in the stay away tier. MAVEN started as another boutique scope company who had their scopes made by Lowe in Japan. These types of scopes were a dime a dozen back then, and the MAVENs seemed very overpriced to me. But when MAVEN came out with a true general purpose hunting scope, the CRS-1 in 3 to 12 by 40, it perked my interest. The CRS-1 was a real low manufactured hunting scope with good glass and a lifetime warranty, and it was only $400, and it just seemed too good to be true. But after I bought it, I really didn't like that scope. The actual eye relief at max power was well under 3 inches, and I almost got scoped in the eye every time I used it on a 30-06. The glass was also really disappointing compared to the TRIJICON Huron that sold about the same price, so I ended up giving away that scope. 6 MAVEN scopes were tested in the Rockslide tests, and only 2 out of the 6 passed. I think MAVEN needs to lower their prices so their scopes are a better value. The MAVEN scopes really shouldn't cost more than a TRIJICON. So I'm going to put them in would buy. Even though they've been making binoculars forever, Steiner didn't start selling hunting scopes until about 2012, so they are relatively new to the hunting scope game. But like Burris, the Beretta Group also currently owns Steiner. The Predator 8 hunting scopes are made in Germany, but they have the worst quality glass of any scope I've ever seen made in Germany. Also, I've never seen a Predator 8 where the turrets actually line up with the mark. So, although the Predator 8 is a real German scope, it's the worst one. Like most Burris scopes, the Predator 4 hunting line is just rebranded, so I'm not really impressed with it. Steiner is currently missing the mark with their high-end and their low-end hunting scopes, so they go into the needs to improve tier. Leica was a top-tier brand when it came to optics, but those days have passed. 10 years ago, Leica was the official binocular and rangefinder at Desert Dog Outdoors, but in the last 5 years, I've had numerous quality and customer service issues with Leica. There's a growing quality problem with products made in Portugal right now, and Leica seems to be experiencing it too. The AM Plus and the Fortis scopes are all made in Portugal, and I think personally that they're way overpriced for the level of quality you receive. I think that Japanese scopes are a way better value than Leica right now. The Leica Magnus line of hunting scopes was excellent, and those were actually made in Germany. But Leica recently discontinued the Magnus, and I really don't know if Leica's even making any German hunting scopes anymore. An AM Plus 6 was tested on Rockslide this year, and it failed pretty fast. So even though Leica scopes have fantastic glass, they need to price their Portugal scopes more competitively, in my opinion. Leica is barely, and I mean just barely, in the would buy tier. And now I want to talk about China specials. And this is a designation I'm giving to the rash of Chinese scopes that are flooding social media and influencers' mailboxes with free samples. Brands like Discovery, Swamp Fox, Vector, Blackhound, Athlon, Falcon, Monstrum, and many others will fall into this China special category. My email is just full of Chinese companies wanting to send me free stuff constantly. Most influencers out there happily take this free junk and give it positive reviews on their YouTube channels, but I'm never going to stoop that low. Discovery Optics sent me a very anti-American email when I refused to review their scope. So stay the fuck away from Discovery. They're horrible. My favorite marketing tactic with these China special companies is when they claim that their scopes are designed in the US by an American company to exacting specifications, but in reality, they're all made at the same factory in China with the same parts. These scopes will not pass any third-party drop test and are overpriced for low-quality scopes. These China specials go into the stay away tier where they belong. Many of the low-end ARKEN scopes fall into the China specials category, but I kept them separate for a reason. I think that ARKEN is a step above the other run-of-the-mill Chinese scopes out there. The glass and construction quality is an obvious step above something like a Discovery or a Swamp Fox scope, but it is far from being great. Amazingly, the turret tracking accuracy is also okay on the higher end ARKEN scopes. Rockslide has tested the ARKEN and it did fail the drop evaluation, but you can't really expect too much at that price point. The reticle options on ARKEN scopes are also a little bit too fine for my tastes and are hard to see without the illumination on. But honestly, I don't think you're going to find a better scope for $350 if you want to dial turrets and shoot at longer ranges. You know, what it lacks in glass and durability, it makes up for in value. So I'm putting ARKEN in the would buy tier based on value alone. TRIJICON's pedigree is not in hunting, it's in combat optics. Since the 1980s, TRIJICON has been making optics that pass the US government's rigorous testing protocol. Durability and reliability have always been the main goal at TRIJICON. When they started making hunting scopes in 1998, they were the most durable hunting scope by far. Throughout the years, while companies like LEUPOLD, ZEISS, and SWAROVSKI were trying to make their scopes lighter, TRIJICON was trying to make their scopes more heavy-duty and durable, so they went the opposite direction. Every TRIJICON scope to enter the rockslide durability test has survived. Even their cheapest scope, the 3x9x40 Huron, passed. You know, and that scope only costs $450 right now. And it passed the drop test without an issue. The AccuPoint scopes in particular are just fantastic in my opinion, and they just might be the perfect hunting scope. TRIJICON has extreme durability, decent glass, great features, and an amazing price point for what you get. I think TRIJICON is the most complete package in this review, and they're going to go in the top tier. Vortex is a company that tries hard to be everything to everyone and pretty much fails most of the time in that pursuit. The only manufacturer that has more quality issues than LEUPOLD right now is Vortex. Their low-end scopes have a horrible glass and quality, and their high-end scopes are overpriced and they don't pass the rockslide evaluation. Vortex scopes are just not durable, and their glass underperforms for the price. Their hunting scopes made in the Philippines are the worst in my opinion, and those thin-walled scope tubes distort easier than any other scope I've ever seen. Like Hornady, Vortex is ingenious at marketing, hyping up products and sponsoring people. But when it comes time to perform in the field, they, are sort of a letdown. So Vortex is solidly in the needs to improve tier. There was a long period in rifle scope history where ZEISS was the best of the best. Now, they might be the worst of the best. ZEISS has awesome heritage and still produces some of the best glass ever put into a hunting rifle scope. But ZEISS is now tarnishing the reputation by trying to dump cheap, low-quality scopes onto the market. ZEISS is pretty much ruining their brand, just like MEOPTA did. For Scope Month, I did a review of the Conquest V4 and even hunted hard on public land to bag a deer with that scope. I actually got 2 V4 scopes to review. Well, that scope that I hunted with stopped tracking and holding zero this summer. And like everyone else, I found out how horrible ZEISS customer service had become. And that issue still isn't resolved. And the second scope that I got, the second V4 scope, well, guess what? That's having issues now. So ZEISS hunting scopes also fail the rockslide tests very easily, even on premium ZEISS scopes. Durability really has taken a back seat at ZEISS, in my opinion, and ZEISS seems to be on a downward spiral right now, with their only saving grace being their fantastic glass. So ZEISS, goes into the needs to improve tier. The SWFA Super Sniper is a legendary budget scope that is more durable than most scopes 4 times its price. Their scopes are more tactically focused than hunting focused, but they do have a few hunting scopes. These things are rated to shoot 50 BMG rifles, and trust me, they are very tough, and these easily pass the rock slide test. And along with NIGHTFORCE and TRIJICON, were the first ones to pass that test. But the high turrets on these, the thin reticles, and the mediocre glass kind of kill the Super Sniper as a serious hunting scope for me. The price has also gone way up on the variable power models, and those are kind of approaching Trijicon prices now. I only really use these scopes on my air rifles nowadays because they're the only budget scopes that can survive a big Springer air gun. SWFA, wants to make ultra reliable scopes for cheap. And, I think they achieved that goal. And because of that, I'd say that SWFA is doing things right. Now let's talk about SIG Sauer hunting scopes. SIG turned me off initially because they flooded the market with crappy Chinese optics and used their name to sell them. I have little respect for marketing strategies like that, honestly. Either you sell good products or you don't, and you never know what SIG is selling these days. I tried to like SIG scopes, but I just haven't really found one I like yet. And admittedly, I haven't tried them all. The Tango and Whiskey scopes really are overpriced junk, in my opinion. And the Mall Ninja names they give their scopes are really cringeworthy as well. I'm just not impressed by a $1,000 scope made in the Philippines with quality issues. SIG has many influencers in their pocket right now, and they have really tight controls over what type of information gets out. I've tried several of the recent whiskey model scopes, and they were way overpriced for mediocre glass and super stiff magnification rings. I'm putting SIG Sauer scopes in the needs to improve category until they can find an identity and actually compete in the quality hunting scope market. Kahles is the world's oldest rifle scope manufacturer, yet few people really know that they exist. The brand really shouldn't be flying under the radar though, because they make fantastic products to really high quality standards. SWAROVSKI bought the company in the 1970s, but Kahles continues to function as its own entity. In fact, Kahles and SWAROVSKI scopes have almost nothing in common other than the fact that they're both made in Austria. Kahles scopes are way more durable than any SWAROVSKI scope, but premium SWAROVSKI scopes do have better glass in my opinion. I'd say that Kahles is doing things right. When you really do your research into hunting scopes and you try out as many of them as I have, you notice one truth. Money will buy you better glass, but money does not buy durability. They're cheap scopes that are much more durable than expensive ones, but expensive scopes almost always have better glass. 2/3 of my subscribers stated that durability and reliability are the most important attributes of a hunting scope, and I tend to agree with them. You also have to realize that the scope industry is constantly in flux, with some brands kind of falling from grace and other brands rising up and reinventing themselves and becoming better companies. So I hope you enjoyed this long video about my hunting scope tier list. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.